Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, guys. How you doing? Welcome back to the podcast. This is my beloved friend Yusef, as you've probably met him in the previous video that I posted, the 21 questions game. How you doing, Yusef?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for taking out your time to be here. And thank you for doing your research and due diligence on the topic that we decided on, which for today is going to be music, as we discussed, right?
Absolutely.
So during the previous video, we talked about a question came up. I think it was Mubashir who asked this question: is music haram, right? And the responses from all of us were intriguing to me, because some of us said that it's very controversial question. Others, including myself, said that it's not that of a controversial question, and so that really piqued both of our curiosities, right? So I asked Yusuf to do research, and before we get into this podcast, I do want to point out that this is a purely educational podcast. It's not meant to give a fatwa or anything like that. We're not any sort of scholars or anything. We're just we're just a bunch of curious guys who are trying to figure out our deen as we go along. Learn more things, and just to be able to spread this knowledge for the better good. So to get right into the actual conversation of music itself, what's 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 the most basic thing that you understood from your research about music?
Well, there's three kinds of music. As a Muslim, there are three kinds of music. There's legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
That means like the Quran, like recitation of the Quran, and then controversial, which is just any kind of other music that you find out there,
Right.
whether it's instrumental or voices and things that aren't related to Islam, like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's obviously illegitimate, where it's just bad, it's just
Right.
like like if it's about like violence and
Yeah.
drugs and all that, that's obviously illegitimate.
Mm-hmm.
Now I
So
think
it's interesting that you said that you call legitimate music like Quran recitation of Quran being part of legitimate music.
Mhm.
So that kind of makes me want to look up the definition of music. So from what I found out, the basic definition of music, well, not a definition, but basically what music is, that we when we talk about music, we're basically referring to a complete piece of work, right?
Mhm.
That includes the sounds, instruments, and the lyrics, right?
Mhm.
That's what music is, according to what I found out.
Mhm.
But I'm sure if we Googled it, we would probably find out a different definition about that, and which I actually kind of want to look up right now.
Well, I think music has its different terms depending on who you are as an
Mm-hmm.
individual too. It's
Okay, here we go. Vocal or instrumental sounds, or both, combined in such a way as to produce beauty of form, harmony, and expression of emotion. So I guess that does. I mean, Quran can uh, be, recitation of Quran can be considered that legitimate music that you talk about, bro.
Well, absolutely. That was one of the points that I wanted to bring up too. Is if you're not a Muslim, this is kind of where I was coming from with this. Was if you're not a Muslim, what does Quran sound like to you?
Right.
Right? It's vocals.
That's
interesting. Like us, we think of Quran like that's word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mm-hmm.
But as a non-Muslim, what do they hear when they hear Quran? Like that doesn't mean anything to them, right? Unless they know
Yeah.
Arabic, and it might mean something. But like other than that, it's a recitation, and it's a beautiful recitation.
Wow. I
And
never thought about that, actually. Yeah.
I think it's very important with this whole discussion of music that there is, like I said, there's legitimate, controversial,
Yeah.
illegitimate, and that legitimacy falls within Quran. That it's one of those. It's a fine piece of work, as
Mm.
we've looked up the definition for music, is it's
Yeah.
a work of art. And in all honesty, like when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought down this word, or like his word, that was like, it's like music to us, because that is how we hear sounds, right? There's
Right.
there's vocals, and there's it brings out emotions. And you've ever heard Quran being recited, and you feel like you want to shed a couple of tears or something.
Yeah. But you know, I think that also like depends very heavily on the tajweed, on the way it is being recited.
right.
Because you know, if for example, I was watching this one YouTube video, and the guy was just like, you know, it's not very um nice to listen to somebody who's got like a smoker's cough in between his
Absolutely.
recitation, or
Yeah.
you know, is pausing too much, who's kind of forgetting his
Stuttering and
is
stuff.
stuttering, or
Yeah.
well, not exactly stuttering, because you know, I feel like stuttering and a lisp or stuff like this is very um it's not something that you do on purpose, or it's not preventable, you know. For example, I think Hazrat and forgive me if I'm wrong, but Hazrat Ali Rizatullah Anha, he had a bit of a lisp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had one of the most beautiful azans
Mm-hmm.
at the time.
Well, you know, a lisp and stuttering. I'm not saying if you have a stuttering issue, this is, you know, I'm not trying to
You're
put you
not
down.
anti-stutter,
I'm
is that what you're trying to say?
not trying to put you down because you have a stutter.
Yeah,
But you know, if you're listening to a stutter, it kind of takes away the rhythm and the movement of the vocals being portrayed there.
mm,
But you know, it is always nice to listen to. Like it's, I mean, if you think about music, like music that you would hear anywhere else, you don't want to listen to somebody that's got a bad voice or bad instrumental going on, you know, stuff like that. You know,
yeah,
like I don't know what you would call a bad instrument, like guitar strings going haywire or something. You
like
know,
an amateur
yeah, like you know,
instrumentalist or
amateur.
something.
Like
Yeah,
I mean, music is music to anybody. That music can be anything. But
yeah,
if you give it bad, if you get it out bad, it's not going to turn out good. You
yeah.
know?
So speaking of types of music, I actually have the three types of music um, that are or types of sound described by Islamic scholars, right?
Mm.
So the first one we have is mutrab, right? Mutrab sounds are those which cause a person to become carefree, happy, or sad, basically bring about a change in one's emotions, right?
Mhm.
Then we have ghina, which was interesting to me because it sounds a lot like zina, which we'll get into in just a
Oh,
minute.
interesting.
In itself, a pleasing sound or reciting something in a pleasing way does not constitute ghina. Rather, ghina is explained as the prolonging of the sound along with a change in the pitch in such a way that is suitable for vain and futile gatherings and assemblies of sinning, such as nightclubs, discos, dance halls, etc. Um, this is very interesting to me as well.
Mm.
And then the third and the last one is law. This is an Arabic term which is used extensively in Islamic jurisprudence, and it means anything that is vain or futile. Sometimes it will be used to refer to a place, such as when the scholars refer to music that is played or used in places where vain or futile acts are taking place, such as the nightclub, disco, etc. And sometimes it refers to a particular act or certain acts that are done with no use or purpose behind them except to waste time. Um,
Mm.
so I feel like ghina and law are two types of sounds that are very correlated in some way. Because to me,
Yes.
those definitions sounded very similar. I'm
Mm.
sure there's some nuance to each one of them. I wasn't able to find any sort um, of you know definition per se, but I did find some examples
Mm.
of law and ghina, right? But what are your thoughts on that? On those three types, are those? Do you think those align with what you were talking about, the three types of music?
So, like legitimate, controversial, illegitimate.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, for sure. Well, but especially between the first and the last. Now,
mm-hmm.
that middle one is somewhat controversial.
Right.
Um, you know, I think, like you were saying, it has a lot of correlation between that last law. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of an oddball.
Right.
Um,
So
but
here I have. I'm sorry to cut you off, but here I have a verse from the Quran. So this is chapter number 31, verse 6.
mm,
وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن what is that? Let me try that again. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن الناس من يشتري لهوه. Right? So there's that word of lah or lahwa, right? And the translation, this isn't the whole verse, but this is part of the verse where the actual word law comes up, right? And amongst people there is he who buys vain talk, so that he may lead others astray from the path of Allah without real knowledge, and takes it, the revelation of Allah, for a mockery. For these shall be a disgracing chastisement, punishment, right?
So, well, I mean, that's like, that's like going against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on for purpose, on purpose of going, like waging war against your creator.
Right.
Especially when it's the term mockery is being used. Like when you're mocking somebody, that's some pure intention to get somebody's, you're really trying to instigate something there.
That's true.
So that, I think that is for sure, like law is definitely illegitimate, kind of like talking about doing drugs or
so modern day rap. So I think we can say
trap.
We can say it very comfortably that most scholars agree on the fact that rap nowadays, music nowadays, is totally prohibited because of the lyrics, right?
Because of the lyrics and intention behind it. Yeah, I mean, there's a good amount out there. Not all modern music is made that way. I think what is being shown to us is bad though.
Right.
Like what we see from your suggested on Spotify or something, or just your media, your radio, even your radio, your local radio station that's supposed to be family friendly.
Right.
I mean, some of those lyrics are just like,
I like that you talk about family friendly, or like music being family friendly, because I realize that modern music it's so, it affects your brain and your mind and your heart in such weird ways that even non-Muslims today tell their kids not to listen to it because of the effects it has on it. I mean, obviously there's a lot of parents now that have just kind of given up, and not only given up but also given in, and they've started listening to it as well.
Yes.
But there was a time where most non-Muslim parents would disagree with their children listening to this stuff.
Yes, I think I mean, I'm with you there. Like back in the day, I know it wasn't like this. Like back in 2000s.
Yeah.
Per se. And before that, it was probably even more strict. Like, I think there's also a bigger factor with this music too, and how it influences our society today, is with forms of media such as movies, propaganda, stuff like that. How that's being portrayed to us, a lot of effect from that too, and that plays into the role of music and how we've been desensitized into thinking some of this music is okay. And how it won't affect us just because they're kids, they're not going to go pick up a gun and start shooting people. Well, it gets into their subconscious, and it will be coming up again sooner or later. You have those thoughts, And I know because I've been there before. I've listened to this kind of music, and it's like, well, that's an interesting thought to play around with, but obviously I won't do that because that's not right. But it definitely gets in there, and I wish that I didn't hear this kind of stuff, because now it's like that. What music, and that was part of my research too, is music. It gets into your memory, lodges into your memory, whether you like it or not, and it brings out emotions, good or bad. I did make an interesting note that there should be caution when listening to music with lyrics, especially when lyrics associate with violence or other haram matters.
Right.
This could apply to music with no voice. And back to how we interpret these words, these sounds, we should certainly take caution when music makes us feel a way to be negligent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's an interesting point, because it's not just vocals that can get you negligent to your deen, but it can also be certain sounds. We have to be careful about sounds that we listen to. There's just so much music out there though, that you just have to be careful, I guess.
And I totally agree with that, because I was reading a study done by Dennis Duman, at a university in Finland. I'm not gonna try to pronounce the name because it's just yeah, I'm not doing that. But Dennis Duman did a paper, music be moved to, right? And she talked about, or he or they talked about you know um, the idea behind certain music and certain audio affecting the human mind, and
Mm-hmm.
not only the human mind but also the human heart,
Mm-hmm.
right? And in one of her parts um, of the paper, uh, Dennis said that there's three main functions for of music, right? And they did a whole research of, I think it was 200 or 350, something like that, people,
Mm-hmm.
and they basically had them listen to music, and basically decide like, what's your favorite music, and like,
Mm-hmm.
they were asking questions like what it is that music helps you accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically boiled it down to three main functions, which were regulation of arousal and mood, achievement of self-awareness, and expression of social relatedness.
Mm-hmm.
However, the top one was the regulation of arousal and mood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a big factor, that leads scholars to believe that anything that affects you emotionally leads, like, is basically something that you shouldn't be listening to. In a hadith from Ad-Dur al-Manthur, um, volume 5, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Stay away from ghina, singing and music, because it destroys the shame, modesty, and increases the sexual excitement. It kills one's manliness and verily leads one to alcohol, and he will then become drunk." Um, so the Huzur Pak Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he kind of correlated music with alcohol and drugs,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we see.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a nightclub, you start listening to the music. Even if
Well,
you left the house and you decided that, I'm just gonna go out, I'm just gonna dance, just gonna spend some time with my friends, I'm gonna stay away from the alcohol, I'm gonna stay away from drugs. You eventually you're affected by the music in such a way that you're like, you know what?
well, yeah, and everybody else around you is affected by it, and you pick up the vibes that everybody else is getting. Vibrations is a real thing, and
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get into that later on in
Yes, we
this. But
will.
vibrations, whether it's by sound or by other people, it definitely gets to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I know because it's like I've had these kinds of feelings before, where it's like I want to go do something, not alcohol related, but
Alhamdulillah.
like, well, what can I like? It's hard to
Well,
bring up an example now,
no,
but
I actually am happy that it's difficult to bring up an example, because if it was so easy to bring up an example, that would show your character, and this shows your character as well. That it's difficult to bring up an example like that. So this is good, I feel like.
well, because there's so many, there's so many different things that you could be picking up a vibration from. I'm just trying to think of a good, like,
Well, there's
like
vibrations in everything.
so like so say you're hanging out with some friends and they want to go
Yeah.
watch a movie,
Yeah.
and you're like, yeah, I'm kind of lazy, but then everybody starts hyping you on. It's like, well, let's go watch the movie, or let's go watch a game. Like
Yeah.
game, especially like a soccer game or something.
Yeah.
You start to get hyped,
Yeah.
because they're like really pushing it onto you.
Yeah.
They're sending out their vibrations
Mhm.
onto you, and
That affects you.
making you feel like, yeah,
You're a loner.
I think I'm gonna go do that, or you could feel down about it.
Well, we've just come up with the theory, guys, that peer pressure is basically just vibrations.
Vibrations
Yeah,
on an extreme level.
Yeah. But you know what really got me in this research, is that this was a paper done in, by the way, this was a recent paper too. This was back in September 2022.
Oh, so just a couple months ago.
So a couple months ago.
Right.
And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said this like way long ago, right? Like over 1400, like over 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Like he knew the key to the answers to humans and human psychology.
To our social downfalls, and pretty much our community downfalls too. It's as it's really interesting. I mean, as a Muslim, we kind of take it for granted that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said all these things about how this kind of stuff would start unraveling to us.
Yeah.
How, like, you know, not just stuff like this, but
Yeah.
like how Saudi Arabia is going to be back to green. Like, we just saw
Yeah.
a recent thing on that where they're making farms in the middle of the desert. It's
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
You know, so it's like
they made some, by the way.
yeah,
They made some. I don't know if they're growing produce on there yet, but they've grown grass.
Well, you know, if we can achieve that, then that's, you know, produce is coming soon. It's not far fetched.
Yeah. And
Just
you know, I
scary.
guess that just goes to show that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was again an illiterate man, you know, 1,000 years ago,
Mhm.
more than that actually. This was like the Quran, the Hadith. This was not from his own mind. This wasn't his
No, this is
saying.
directly.
You know,
This is from Allah subhanahu
this
wa
is
ta'ala.
from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
And then
Or his angels, you know, Jibril and stuff. But yeah.
yeah, I mean, they
Yeah,
bought
I
them
know, yeah, I
over,
know.
but you know, it's a different conversation. But in the same paper done by Dennis Duman, they said music is a powerful driver of affect and motion-related experiences. Music listening frequently creates feelings of pleasure and induces spontaneous movements such as foot tapping, swaying, or head nodding. The fact that even infants move to music rather automatically demonstrates the interwovenness of dance and music.
I've seen cats bobbing their head. It's kind of funny.
We were just talking about cats.
They're funny, dude. I saw this. There's this one video of this guy chilling. He's bobbing his head, and then you can see his cat come in, and she or he just starts, you know, bobbing with the music too. They're like on rhythm, you know.
Yeah. But you know, this was also interesting because one of the brothers from the community here at Maps, he pointed out that beats, you know, that we listen to in music is basically the shaitan beating you, which leads you to swaying your head and whatnot.
So here's an interesting thing that I found. It was actually an article in Vice, and I'll find you the link later on so that you can reference this.
I'd appreciate that.
So with this article, this was about, is music haram? And it was about it was actually somebody from Pakistan.
Oh, really?
Who grew up his entire life until about 16, 17 years old, not listening to any music because it was forbidden in his household. Like, you know, that was just the thing. And so he thought that was completely normal.
Yeah.
However, he started to tap into it, and this is part of the article where I found most interesting evidence of what music to listen to, what music to not listen to, and back to legitimate, controversial, illegitimate.
Right.
There are no direct references to music in the Quran. Certain hadiths, sayings, and actions of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ argue that music is haram. Like when Abu Huraira reported the Prophet Muhammad saying, "The bell is the musical instrument of the shaitan." It's back to your thing about how, you know. But you know, it's kind of interesting too, like the church bells. You hear that? It's like,
oh no, the church. Like, Christians are crazy, bro.
No, Christians are. I know some very nice Christians.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
The bell thing is kind of an odd duck, you know.
Yeah, no, I found a lot of hadiths about the bell. Like a lot of hadiths.
Yeah,
I mean, I think I added like one maybe, but like there was a plethora of hadiths about the bell.
Absolutely, no, and this is a statement that is not to be understated.
Yeah. Also, this is a good topic to talk about with the Christmas coming.
Yeah, you know, jingle bells.
Yeah.
So, you know, it kind of makes you wonder. Yeah. This is a very haram time of year. It's the most haram time of the year. I'm sorry.
No, it really is, because they're celebrating. You know,
as a Muslim toward, you know, these kinds of sounds, it's almost taunting in a way. So when somebody says Merry Christmas to me, I don't say Merry Christmas back. I say Happy Holidays. This is a very...
Yeah, I refrain from doing that.
Definitely. I mean, this is something that we don't believe in.
I mean, yes, holidays are happy, but these specific ones aren't like happier.
Something about Christmas is very controversial in itself, and it's, you know, this is a huge topic that should be brought up another time. However, here is kind of a turning point of what I was just talking about, you know, of how music is haram because of the bell being an instrument of shaitan. Al-Ghazali, one of the most influential Muslim philosophers and scholars of the 11th century, wrote an essay titled Music and Singing, where he said, I need to do more research on this music and singing essay that Al-Ghazali wrote, because I'm curious as to what he had to say about music and singing.
Yeah.
But there was a part of it where he was saying, whoever says that all music is prohibited, let him also claim that the songs of birds are prohibited. So this is very, very, very interesting, because I myself have gone out and just like I listen to the rain, I listen to the birds chirping in the morning, and it sounds like music to me. You know, this is like, I don't want to say arousal, like, you know, like how Gina is, but it's like, it feels nice to listen to. It's almost like listening to nature. You listen to nature, it's like listening to the Quran or something. It's like, this is the creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made for us.
Yeah.
You listen to the waterfalls, you listen to the ocean waves, you know.
And these are, I mean, I wouldn't say, I definitely, oh, this is going on. We'll cut off right there. We are back, feeling refreshed, alhamdulillah. And we were talking about what parts of the brain that music affects, and how it can affect you on a day-to-day basis. Please continue.
Right. So I think, you know, like I was saying, that music affects the part of your brain that is key with emotion and memory. That goes without saying, that what people say to you and what you hear goes into that memory and emotion part of your brain, you know. So music is kind of, it's relevant in the way that it's what you hear and that's what you get.
Yeah. Before you move on, I'd like to add a little something. So I'm a big believer in words are strong. You know, words have the strongest vibrations to them, because they're literally actually vibrations, right?
Yes.
But when we say words out loud, or like when we type down words or whatever, it's called, what is it called? Spelling a word, right? You're spelling a word. You know what else you spell, or you use as a spell, a literal spell, you know, like
like magic.
Like magic, exactly. Yes. So words are basically magic, you know, and they affect you in the most, I don't know how to put this in words, but the closest thing that comes to mind is efficient way possible. They affect your mind, your body, and your soul all together. And words are very important in life. And for me, whenever somebody says, oh, it's difficult, or it's this, or even when I say something like, oh, you know what, it's kind of difficult, I don't believe in that. I believe whatever I say out loud, or whatever it is, it's gonna become reality. There was this one point in time.
It will come to fruition, reality.
Yeah, exactly. And there was this point where I was just saying stuff to myself in the mirror, right? This was before I started my YouTube channel. I was like, I'm gonna be a YouTuber. I'm gonna be the best YouTuber in the world. You know, I said this to myself, like, I know this sounds funny, but I said this to myself like 10, 20 times in the mirror when I woke up, before I went to bed. You know, and it works. I have 2 channels now. They're not much. They don't have all that together. I think I have like 70 subscribers or something. But like,
but you're somewhere, right?
Like, it's somewhere, you know. Progress, no matter how small, is still progress. You know?
Yeah. So you know that this is a kind of an off subject, but I was listening to a YouTube channel. It's by this guy who, he's a teacher somewhere in one of the Ivy schools, and his YouTube channel is called Let's Talk Religion. It's an interesting channel. You should look into it sometime.
Well, is this the professor from Cambridge?
Is that what it is?
I think that might be what it is.
Oh, okay. So I was listening to his YouTube channel about how.
Wait, is he Muslim?
No, he's not.
Never mind.
He's. I don't think so. At least he's very knowledgeable in Islam, though, and which is odd. You would think that somebody that knowledgeable in Islam would have figured out.
I mean, Allah guides who He will.
That's true, and that's another interesting point. So spells. So magic in different religions.
Yeah.
So you take Christianity and Judaism, where magic was just all around forbidden. Like, there's talk of magic, that's out of the question. That's forbidden. However, in Islam, black magic is forbidden.
Right.
So any kind of magic that goes against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will, that creates harm. So, this is now back to another tangent. Now
Yeah,
this the illegitimate music
yeah,
that
yeah.
spells out
Yeah, yeah,
violence.
yeah. That's
It's
interesting how you tie that in. But regarding that, considering that, I think all magic is prohibited because I'll tell you why as well. At the time of at the time of Prophet Suleiman, alayhi salam, everybody was doing magic.
mhm,
Magic was like phones are today, right?
mhm.
Everybody did it. Like literally everybody was on it, right?
Right, but
Um,
it's not saying that magic, it's us committing magic that is forbidden,
yeah.
but magic itself is a concept that is not forbidden. As I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's what he does. If you think about it, it's this life is like
I
it's
don't
a
think how
miracle,
that
you
ties
know?
in because like if magic is forbidden, the act of doing magic is performing magic is forbidden to us.
Yes.
Then magic is prohibited. That's it.
But there is magic that happens.
But it's prohibited though. I mean, there's
But
sex
there's
like
magic
people who do like intercourse outside of marriage. That's prohibited,
absolutely.
but they still do it. There's drinking that's prohibited, but people still do it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean, but magic is a thing though.
No, I'm not
And
saying
with
it's
Allah
not.
subhanahu wa ta'ala, that what he
Yeah.
does is magic. You know?
I think that's more that's
To his
closer
will,
to.
to for us, that is magic. I mean,
I think
whether we like it or not, that is
yeah.
magic. There's
No, no,
black
no.
magic and there's
I
magic.
think the word you would use to describe what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala does is miracles. That's what He does, miracles. It's not magic.
Hmm.
Magic is something that humans can perform,
Hmm.
whether it's to harm somebody, whether it's for their own benefit, regardless of what they're using it for.
Hmm.
Magic is something that humans or let's say jinn not perform. I don't know if they do, right?
Jinn?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Um,
mean, that's why
that's
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 where
their
we would get our magic from is from
exactly.
jinn.
But that's the thing. Like when I've heard stories, I've heard plethora of stories, right? That when you perform magic, or when somebody performs magic, they're basically submitting their will to that jinn that they're using
Hmm.
to perform that magic.
Hmm.
And so that lies under shirk.
Yes.
That's my, excuse me, that's my understanding of why magic is prohibited.
Yeah.
So I think you can't just really say that there's magic and black magic. There's magic and then there's sleight of hand, if that what you're talking about. Like
Sleight of hand. Yeah.
yeah, which is stuff like magicians do card tricks or parlor
Yeah.
tricks.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So
Yeah.
it's called magic, sure. But stuff like Chris Angel does, that's dark magic, bro. That's like straight up like he's doing on some like voodoo stuff or
Yeah.
something.
Well, that's definitely prohibited.
Yeah,
But
but then there's David Blaine. I don't know if he performs any sort of dark magic tricks, but he has a lot of party or slash parlor tricks. Like for example, there's this very old trick that you put a frog and you kind of stick it in your in a in like in your esophagus,
mhm.
and basically you spit it out into a glass, and everyone's like, "Where did that come from?" And it's based on training though. You train your esophagus and your
Oh, well, yeah.
GI
That's sleight of
tract
hand.
to kind of
That's
like that falls under sleight of hand. I don't think you that would constitute as magic
no.
per se.
I don't think that would go into
But
magic.
that also is, I think it is. I don't know if it's prohibited, but it's disliked among a lot of scholars because it's deception, and deception is something that a Muslim is not supposed to do.
Yeah.
We're just not supposed
Yeah.
to deceive other people.
Yes. Yeah.
And fun fact about me, I actually used to do magic. Like, and again, now I'm using the term magic very generally. I used to do sleight of hand.
Hmm.
I didn't like sacrifice owls and like eat their
Sure.
meat or something and then poop in the same place and all that stuff. Yeah, that's actually how you do dark magic. It's like filled with filth, basically.
Oh,
And then there's this one story,
I didn't know
and I
that.
know this is a very long tangent, but there's this one story where this guy, he basically wanted to do magic. And long story short, he went to the beach, and then this weird figure came out of the ocean, and it asked it to go poop in a cave or something, and then put some food there. I don't know what the exact terms were, but then one of the term was like, you have to give up your prayers. You have to indulge yourself in total prohibition from Allah's way, which is what we were talking about. Like a lot of ghina is what
Yes.
takes you away
yes.
from Allah's ways, and mocks Allah's way, because if you're leaving your prayer, by the way, to complete the story, the guy ended up not going through that process because he had morals and that had been instilled since childhood, that he was like, I can't give up prayers,
Yeah.
so that's what saved him. And then the weird being like screamed or screeched and this disappeared into water back again. So yeah, I think magic and sleight of hand are two different things. But yeah, coming back to like the topic of music, and okay, now specifically, it's something that mocks Allah's way and mocks the fact that it basically just indulges you in shirk.
Yeah, replicating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's magic. Well, not his magic, his miracle is.
Well, you can't replicate that either.
Yeah, well, but see that itself is like something that we can't quite explain. So I guess to me, miracle is like magic. It's because magic is out there. It's not quite prohibited to me. Obviously, I would never try to perform magic.
Yeah,
just out.
But
putting that out
I
there.
guess now that I think about it, like magic is a term that can be used very generally, just like friend can be used very generally.
Yes.
Like you're my friend. I can say that to you, and I can say that to my neighbor. I don't sit down and do a podcast with my neighbor. I don't have coffee with him. I don't hang out with him, but I'll still call him a friend.
It's a very general term.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there is a more specific way on how to describe this. But anywho, back to spelling and how it affects you.
Yeah.
That in itself is almost like magic. Literally the word spell. Like how do you break down a word? You spell it out.
Yeah.
How do you break down a song? You look at its lyrics or its beats, however which way you want to break it down. And this ties the whole thing just ties back into the intention behind music.
Yeah.
And what wording is placed there, what instruments are being used, and how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
There's potential magic, I think, with the music. Because I think it's all about intention, too. I mean, if you listen to a song about somebody going through it, they're just hella sad or something.
Going through what?
Well, I don't know, like a breakup or something. You listen to that song and say, like you listen to Adele or something. Her voice is very beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's about breakup.
That's something I really want to talk about. But before we go into that, to kind of tie back into your the thing about affecting specific areas of the brain. So Dennis Duman, the same paper that we were talking about before music we moved to, they say, moreover, in the absence of overt movements, for example, during passive listening, particularly in rhythm and beat perception, it is not only auditory regions of the brain that are activated, motor and reward regions also fire. Thus, one might describe the perception of music as a pleasurable and movement-inducing state. And then there was another study done by Francesca Greco. In that's like a ghetto. This is also a recent study. This was July of this year, 2022. I'm not sure what university this is from, but it's called Effects of Self-Selected Music versus Motivational Music. And they basically carried out a study with people exercising. There was a control group. There was a group that selected their music on their own, and then there was a group that they chose a playlist of motivational music for, right? And it says music could act as ergogenic aid in enhancing psychological, for example, affective states, psychophysical, that is perception of one's physical state, and physiological, for example, heart rate responses. And this is taken from a paper written by Terry in 2020.
That's all very true. I mean, it ties back into the one thing about Duman, or what was this? Did I get that right? The first one that you read?
Yeah.
About how it affects your brain, your body, your motor skills.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
I think this research that I'm talking about right now, the Greco research.
Mhm.
So it showed quite promising results actually, and I have this kind of um, line graph here with me.
Mhm.
So the SSM is the self-selected music, the MM is the motivational music, and the CC is the control group. I don't know what the second C stands for. But basically, they researched over 12 repetitions
Mhm.
of a certain exercise. I will have to take a look at what that exercise was, but it was basically a strengthening exercise, like a muscle strengthening. So it was lifting,
Mhm.
lifting weights, basically.
Right. Right.
Um, and the mean force exerted by the people who selected their music themselves
Mhm.
started around 550 to 560 range, right? And then it went down to about 470 or 480 range
Mhm.
by the 12th rep,
Mhm.
whereas the the motivational music group, this is very interesting. Um, their force, their mean force started from 510 to 520 newtons and went down to about 460 newtons, which is very interesting by the 12th rep.
Mhm.
Um, so this shows that like um, music does have effect on not only your mind, your heart, but also your physical
Performance.
performance, and like it changes.
Yeah,
Um,
that's like what I was saying like earlier. How music. There's people that listen to certain kinds of music for working out or going on a run or something because it keeps you going. Sometimes
yeah,
you. But then there's also music that puts you down.
yeah, like the depressive music.
Depressing things, or
Yeah,
if you find it depressing, sometimes I like listening to sad music.
yeah.
Well, not gonna lie, like it's there. Obviously, there's no ill intention behind the sad music. It doesn't make me want to kill myself or anything, but
I hope not, bro. But
it
if it
is.
does, I'm here for you. You
No, it's
know.
fine. Don't worry about it. Um, it's all very relative on how you intake it, but
Yeah,
it also how I've noticed how it affects me is that I'll listen to something sad, but I'm not going to feel the same way as if I listened to something that was uplifting and had a generally better feel to the song
yeah,
than the sad music did. And this is just like are back into like subconscious and like whether you like it or not, the way it affects you,
yeah,
it affects you differently. This kind of stuff, whether you want it to or not, what you hear is what you get.
yeah.
You get what you pay for.
Like we were talking about earlier before starting the podcast.
Our equipment.
Not those things.
Oh,
The
okay. Never
yeah.
mind.
But it's yeah, I think it's interesting research.
All right. So I think we left off where
You were talking about Imam Ghazali, I think.
Imam Ghazali and his how if you say that all music is prohibited, let him also claim that the songs of the birds are prohibited.
Mm-mm.
Songs of the birds. That's their vocals. If you think about it,
Yeah, yeah.
every all of us are creations of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and we all have our
Ways of
own
communicating.
own ways of communicating, own ways of being vocal.
Mm-hmm.
A snake hisses, a
Yeah,
bird chirps, we talk,
yeah.
a dolphin squeaks. I don't know.
What
Bats.
does a dolphin do actually? Wait, I'm curious now. I want to look that up. What does wait? Do you think if I just do what does a dolphin do, it'll come up?
Remember there was that one song like back in the day?
Sound
It's like,
like?
what does the fox say or something?
Oh yeah, bro. Yo, this is the perfect time to bring this up because we're talking about music and that's fantastic, man.
I completely forgot about that until you looked up this. What does the dolphin say?
Okay, wow. It just says how a dolphin sees with sound.
Oh, that's
Because
interesting.
sonar and
Echolocation.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um.
It's well,
All right, please go ahead.
vibrations.
I will look this up later. Because I'm just gonna go into like a rabbit hole. But go ahead.
So back to this, and this is also brings it back to the legitimate, controversial, and illegitimate. Is that there is no unequivocal answer on whether Muslims are allowed to listen to music or not.
Mm.
The fashionable consensus is that music can be placed into 3 broad categories: legitimate, controversial, and illegitimate.
Oh, so you got this from the Imam Ghazali book?
This is from the article on Vice, and
Okay.
this is what he had depicted from
Al
the
Ghazali
essay,
guy, huh?
yeah, Al Ghazali, and the hadiths,
Yeah.
that was brought by Muhammad Sallallahu
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
So like the call to prayer, religious chants are legitimate.
Yeah.
Almost all the types of non-religious music are controversial. Illegitimate music is considered to be one that takes people away from their faith.
Mm.
One's about smashing shots in the club and smoking weed.
Okay. That was
so all other types of non-religious music. So this statement in itself is a bit controversial because
wait, say that again, please.
All it says here, almost all other types of non-religious music are controversial.
Mm.
So what is considered music? Because like I just said now, I go out there and I listen to the birds chirping. That's music to me. I listen to the waterfall coming down. That's it. It sounds nice to listen to,
Yeah.
but it's not quite religious.
So I actually have a hadith from Al-Kafi. Imam Jafar ibn Muhammad as-Siddiq reports from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he said, "I prohibit for you dancing and playing flute and drums." And I found this over and over again, and I found this very interesting that the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam never explicitly said that music is haram.
Right.
He only account of him prohibiting any sort of instrument even or any sort of music is the flute or the drum, right? Those are two things.
The bells too, right?
Well, yes, the bells are, I think that's self-explanatory because like he said that it's Shaitan's tool,
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, these are the only two things I found that he actually prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a plethora of accounts of the Prophet ﷺ. So there's another one from Tibrani. Kisan narrates that Hazrat Muawiyah anhu stated in his khutbah, "Verily Rasulullah ﷺ forbade 7 things, and I too forbid you from these things. Know that these things are loud wailing on occasions of death." So just crying out loud, as the white people say. Singing and pictures and so on, right? So singing is a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's another hadith narrated Urwa on the authority of Aisha radhiyallahu anha. On the days of Mina, 11th, 12th, and 13th of Zulhijjah, Abu Bakr came to her while 2 young girls were beating the tambourine, and the Prophet ﷺ was lying covered with his clothes. So a tambourine, which is not a I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it's not a drum or a flute or a bell.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Abu Bakr scolded them, and the Prophet ﷺ uncovered his face and said to Abu Bakr, "Leave them, for these days are the days of Eid and the days of Mina." Aisha further said, "Once the Prophet ﷺ was screening me, and I was watching the display of black slaves in the mosque, and Umar anha scolded them. The Prophet ﷺ said, 'Leave them, O Bani Arfida. Carry on, you are safe, protected.'" And there's a few more here that I have that suggest that the Prophet ﷺ never really, nor did he encourage it, nor did he say, prohibit it.
Mm-hmm.
But like that one hadith where the 2 girls were using the tambourine, right? And actually, let me look it up. I'm kind of curious about that as well. What a tambourine is exactly. I have a picture in my mind, but I don't know if that's the actual thing.
Well, so it's sort of like a handheld drum kind of thing. Oh no, that's
okay.
Some of the ring things.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of a drum.
Yeah.
But like, it's not exactly a drum. It's because it's got like it's a percussion instrument, not because I know drums are usually used for bass and treble. I think I'm probably wrong. And then those discs you see, like the gold. Usually they're bronze or gold.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually used for their percussion,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
this is sort of that thing.
Yeah, it sort of goes into percussion kind of
Yeah, so it's not
area.
exactly bass, you know,
Yeah.
because it's this is also interesting to me because actually when you hear a drum or any kind of drum really,
Mm.
it actually affects you more. It has much stronger vibrations, hence the bass. You know, the bass always is the
It's
strongest.
very sharp, yes.
Yeah, it's you can always feel the bass before you hear or feel the treble,
Yes.
right? So I think that's very interesting because that really kind of intersects with our idea of feelings and vibrations and how music and sort of instruments, all these affect our emotion, like we just saw in Dennis Duman's paper, that it affects you. You know, it affects your emotion. It leads to arousal
Mm-hmm.
in the human mind and the human body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, what is the definition of arousal?
Literally like what you think it is, like arousal, like it makes you
But
horny.
oh, well, I didn't
Yeah.
think of that.
Yeah.
Well, see, what I was thinking for that is like, people listen to music for certain. There's different things that people would listen to music for, and I was reading something by AARP, and this was a research done by, I guess there's a group out there that studies the brain.
Right.
It's like a global brain study, whatever. I don't know,
Nice.
but I
The
didn't.
global brain study.
No, there's like there's a bunch of, I
GBS,
guess,
is that what they're called?
I don't know. There's a bunch of scientists though. There's
Okay.
something about global brain health. I'm not exactly
Okay.
sure. And how it actually may help with issues that you may be dealing with, and um, there's there's a lot of different things that music could be used for, and it's not just as a Muslim we would go toward reaching out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking him for his guidance and
Yeah.
asking for help. So that is kind of like, that's an obvious thing there.
Yeah.
But to the common, that kind of makes me sound arrogant. I want to say,
Non-Muslim.
yeah, to the non-Muslim, it's like music. It may bring you comfort, it may bring you excitement.
Yeah.
Like, you listen to music when you're working out. Like there's certain music that puts you down. There's certain music that brings you up.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in just a minute once you're done with that.
Sure. So let me just read my note here.
Yeah.
How it may help with issues you may be dealing with, such as depression, and how music reaches a part of your brain that is key in memory and emotion. So when dealing with pain that is inside and or stress, there might be something out there that will help with what you're going through. As Muslim, however, we know there's du'as and whatever, there's
Right.
all these
Well,
things that
you
we
can
can
always
do.
listen to Quran.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. We're gonna go pray real quick, and then we'll be back, inshallah.
I think there's more to it that we haven't done enough research on, such as what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said about this. And obviously there was examples given, but I think there may be more out there, and I think we need to look further into the scholars. And
yeah, I think there's a lot of scientific evidence to suggest that,
yes,
or like to prove that it does, like music does affect the human mind, brain, and body.
Yeah.
I just said mind and brain, but brain, heart, and body, basically.
Yes. One thing I want to bring up, that this is from Asia Society. Like I said, I'll reference these. I'll give links to
I appreciate
the stuff I hear at the end of this. But Islam is like I'm just going to go off of this. Islam is like a clear stream with a well-defined characteristic, which is the same everywhere. Our deen is the same everywhere. But the soil over which the stream flows can be very varied. Moreover, in each case, the water will take on the color of the shores, the sand, or the earth which forms its bed. Now, people from everywhere in this world have become Muslim. I mean, I'm sure you can find somebody in Antarctica that's Muslim. I'm sure there's a mosque down there. If there's not, we'll go make one.
Inshallah. I love that. Next project is that one.
Yeah. But, culture, there is music and culture.
Yeah.
And music and culture is not, we didn't go to all these places and prohibit this practice of making music that was there before Islam came to these places. Now, given Islam is supposed to reach every place on this earth, why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow this kind of, it could be a part of our test, that's definitely true,
Yeah.
to combat Islam. Like, why would there be music like that? And so I think, music is very controversial. And I believe that there's certain kinds of music that is allowed, certain kind of music that's not allowed. But at the end of the day, music is always going to be there, whether we like it or not. It was there, like, before Islam came to the humans.
There's actually scientific evidence that suggests that music came before speech. So humming and that kind of stuff was even
like,
there
before.
Like
tapping on
that
sticks
was
and whatever,
there even before speech. So that's also interesting.
Yes, yeah. And so I think that, which, however way we want to look at it with Islam sets us a guideline. And there was an interesting hadith that the Imam brought up after Isha, actually, about how Islam is not just about our, like, how we practice. It's also about who we are as a people.
Yeah.
And who we are as a people. Our character, yes. And who we are as a people is defined by our surroundings, music, environment, etc. All the things.
Well, he didn't say this, but yeah.
But that's what defines us as a character, is what our surroundings and stuff like that. So music can be, it's definitely one of our surroundings.
Major part of our surrounding, I would say.
Yes. And so we should obviously take caution into what we listen to. I mean, for the time being, I do want to do more research on this and figure out what's really going on here.
Yeah. I can say with pure confidence now that we don't know if music is but I think there's also the fact that
it's good to take caution.
It's good to take caution, and then another thing is, in Islam, everything is halal until specified otherwise.
Yes.
And there's just not enough accounts of it being specified as haram in the Quran or the Hadith that it's prohibited.
Yeah.
And then also, I think, and this is something that scholars say as well, is that if you don't understand something truly, if you don't know whether something is right or wrong, that's when you take your heart's fatwa.
Yeah.
Because
what feels right and what feels wrong.
Exactly. Because that's coded into us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Yes. And so I think this is one of those things that we should just take a fatwa from our heart on. Like, I used to listen to house music and deep house and techno and all this stuff, and I recently tried listening to it again, but it just didn't seem right. And so I just stopped. That was just not.
That's very interesting, because I'm somewhat different from that point of view. So that is what I actually, not house music per se, but music that's got more instrumental to it rather than voices. And it really depends on the voices, because like I said, I'll listen to Adele. Yeah. Just that's whole vocals all the way. But I like tried listening to like rap again, and it's like, that ain't it. It's not.
It just doesn't.
That's
feel
not
right.
there. It doesn't feel right, and it's one of those things that just does not feel right, and that's not going to be right.
Yeah.
And you can tell, because of what you feel afterwards is like, it doesn't feel like Islam.
Yeah. One more thing, so there's this thing called qawwalis, right? And it's a kind of a cultural thing, mainly from the Indo-Pak region, so mostly Pakistan and India. And it's basically a few instrumentals and a lot of really beautiful vocals in it. One certain example is Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, which is used to be a legend within his industry.
Is that the guy you're talking about at the cafe?
It was, yeah. I just wanted to know if those guys were actually Pakistani.
I'm sure they were, and they just, this guy's complicated.
No, I was just messing with them. Okay. But I think I listened to his stuff, like his qawwalis, and like it wasn't nothing. Like, I didn't feel anything wrong with it, to be honest with you.
I think that because there's also like a very deep cultural root to it. It's like it's in your culture. It's like it's part of you, as who you are and how you're defined. Given that you're Pakistani, but
racist. But I think we can say that the inclusive conclusion is that some stuff is halal, some stuff is maybe haram, including drums, flute, and bells. Which is,
I do want to do more research on that. Like, what is classified as haram in sounds. Like
Yeah.
the bell thing is like, you know, you start hearing bells outside and Sunday noon, you go, ding ding. It's like,
Yeah, I'm not sure about
this is the
that.
call of the shaitan. I better go hide.
Yeah.
You know,
But I
start
don't
reading
want.
Ayatul Kursi.
I was just letting it. But
No,
thank you for being on the podcast, Yusuf.
absolutely,
I definitely want to look more into this and get back to it with you.
absolutely.
And we should definitely get back again soon to do another podcast on this. And thank you for coming out here. I know you gotta catch a ferry, so I don't want to keep you too long.
No,
But
it's
I
okay.
really appreciate you doing all this research that you did and coming out and talking with me.
25 minutes worth of research.
Hey, something's
No,
it's
you know,
better
it's
than
better than
nothing.
nothing. Yeah, no, this
Yeah,
actually provided a lot of insight, more than I expected, and so that's good. And
yeah,
I'm glad I got to be part of this.
yeah,
And I think maybe next time too, we should bring Ubashir into this. And I
yeah,
know he's got some insight from his father, who is an imam here, by the way, at
yeah.
NAPS. And
I'm trying to sit down with him soon as well on a podcast as well.
yeah, yeah,
Inshallah. But I hope you guys learned something from this. And we definitely, I think we can speak for both of us. Just like you said, we learned a lot of stuff as well that we didn't
mm-hmm.
know before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this discussion is not, again, this is not. We're not trying to give out a fatwa or anything. We're just trying to, pet our curiosity and just kind of fulfill our curiosity. I think that's a better word.
Stroke our curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we should do more research on this and definitely talk to people with more
Yes,
knowledge.
I'm with you there. Yeah.
But thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Just kind of spread the knowledge out there, which is the purpose of this.
And also ask your questions, and if you have questions, drop it in the comments.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's a good idea, actually. And we will try to the best of my abilities to respond to you guys' question with the full context. See you in the next one.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum
Assalamu alaikum
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
warahmatullahi.